Hello and welcome to another video. When it comes to training for muscle gain, obsession will always give you more results than optimal training or science-based lifting. Let's start off with a little story. Recently, I drove across the whole continent of North America, United States, starting out in Boca Raton, north of Miami.
Sunset chasers.
Just in life, it's all about just finding your sunset.
Crusading up through the South, across the Midwest, into the Wild West, penetrating up across the northern boundary into the Great White North of Canada. And why this is significant in terms of training for muscle gain is that along my journey, I ran into some speed bumps, literal on the road, and also figuratively speaking, in terms of sticking with my routine, continuing to train for muscle gain. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that my beliefs, key tenets of muscle growth for me personally are consistency, intensity, and some form of progression. So on a trip like this, it's going to be difficult to maintain consistency, and that came to a head when we entered into Wyoming, the least populated state in the whole country of America. And for those of you that are geographic novices and you're not aware of what all the different states look like, Wyoming's fairly big, but nobody lives there. Anyways, after a long day on the road of 9 to 10 hours of driving, it was time to hit a session. I was due, hitting arms every other day right now, and I was scheduled to train, looking for a gym. Difficult to find one. Went to multiple different locations, closed, finally found one, got in there, started stretching, warming up, and before I could really get a super nasty, juicified pump session, the bitch closed down on me, kicked out. Got a little pump in, and we're out of there. Not sufficient. Back to the hotel room. This is what you're seeing here, backpack curls. Backpack, Skull Crushers, backpack curls. And you might be saying to yourself, this guy's a nut. He's got a mullet, he's curling a backpack. What the hell does he know about training for muscle gain? What I'm trying to illustrate to you here is that obsession will drive way more of your results because it'll push you to do all of the actions or habits that will produce the growth, which are much more important than knowing. And optimal training or science-based lifting prioritizes knowing the best way to do something. In other areas of life that are more complex, let's say rocket science, knowing information, data, knowledge, very important. You can have the good habits of showing up all the time and pushing really hard with intensity through your rocket formulas to try to calculate the right amount of fuel to weight ratio of the craft going into space. But if you don't have genius level brain cells and the right data and knowledge, it's not going to matter. Right? But working out is the inverse of that. The habits of showing up all the time, having obsession to fuel your consistency, your intensity, and your desire for some form of progression is what is really at the core of producing additional results. And making it more complex than that through continuous scientific analyzation, I think, is counterproductive because the subject matter itself is simply not that complex. I've said this before in other videos, it's like using a high-powered telescope to study a pebble. Point that thing into space and look at some intergalactic dimensional planets or some shit, all right? Using that high-powered lens of science and meticulous analytical analyzation on lifting, I think is counterproductive. So for a lot of you out there, we're trying to juicify your meat vehicle. It's not that complex. And if you find a way or have it internally to be obsessed with the process, to go to the lengths of doing a freaking backpack workout in a Wyoming hotel, you're gonna get way better results than the person who lacks that obsession and that consistency, but knows everything. And this story shows kind of a bit of an insane not normal approach. Most people would say, I'm on a road trip, I'm traveling for 10 hours a day driving, and everything's working against me here. I'm in Wyoming, I can't find a gym. I finally found one, it's like 9 o'clock, and then they close, I didn't get my whole workout in, like, I'll call it. That's a normal, sane way of viewing the situation. But if you really want substantial results in terms of developing the muscularity of your physique, you can't subscribe, in my opinion, to that thought process and that perspective. You got to be a bit of a nut. You got to be obsessed to the point where you'll do anything to try to stay consistent, push with high intensity, and force yourself to continue to progress. And this is just an example of it. And I hope that any of you that are watching take it seriously and digest it. I'm not telling you to go to Wyoming and do a backpack workout in a hotel, but I'm telling you that whatever speed bumps you hit in your life that derail your training, there is a choice. Like almost always you could still find a way to train. You could still find a way to push for more. But are you willing to adopt the more ridiculous, insane, not culturally or societally accepted perspective? You know, you're really prioritizing this one activity of training for muscle gain that most people are going to think is a bit absurd. But if you want really good results, that's what you need to do. And most people that I've met in real life, because we're all looking at, you know, images, videos on social media, or even movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, people that have, you know, top tier genetics and they're on some shit. They develop bodies that are, you know, that tip top elite level muscular development. And most people are striving for that same type of thing when they go into the gym. There's a large amount of you, and if you're following my channel, we talk mostly about muscle gain, a little bit about imbalances and mobility, but a lot of it is about muscle gain. That's what I'm most passionate about. That's what you're interested in. That's kind of the objective, or the thing that we're all looking up to. That standard of muscular development, that physique that you have in mind, you don't achieve that without obsession. You just don't. That's the reality. You can gain 10, 20 pounds of muscle, you know, if you stick with it for 10 years, maybe 30, 40 pounds, but you're probably gonna be disappointed. You're not gonna have the results that you want based on the media you're consuming, whether it be movies, movie stars, or social media. So given that, if you want to be realistic about your goal and you do decide that you want to do that, you want to build that body, then obsession is the only way. And doesn't mean that it's exclusive of knowledge and optimal training or science-based lifting, but it can't be substituted for that. And that's what typically happens, is that people focus on knowing how to train the best, and they don't focus enough on the obsession of the hard sacrifices of giving up other things in your life, of being, you know, maybe a bit of a social outcast because you're prioritizing this one activity that most people don't prioritize to that level. Yeah, that's pretty much the freaking talk. I had a little, you know, probiotic seltzer with a little shot of whiskey in there, so I'm rambling, but that's what I want to get out to you guys. So hopefully you can, you know, make some more progress and really digest that obsession is the most realistic way to achieve the physique that you're looking at based on the media that you're exposed to. And yeah, science-based lifting, optimal training has its place, but not in substitute of that. So you gotta be willing to do some wacky shit. And then at the end of the day, all these details that we're obsessing over, tempo, volume, frequency, blah, 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 doesn't matter that much, man. Backpack workout, that's not optimal, is it? There's no way. That thing weighed maybe 40 pounds, just chucking it around, supersetting, back and forth, like, I don't know, just try to do something. And there's nothing wrong with messing around with your training parameters a little bit. You know, keep your foundation where you're trying to focus on progressive overload and you're chasing, you know, reps and weight at the beginning of the session when you're the most fresh. Use a lengthened rest time to let yourself recover, to have maximum output for the next set, and track your workouts and push for more each time. Attack the sets with a little bit of explosive tempo. Controlling it too much, I think, limits your ability to progress the weight over time. The beginning of your workout should look like that. After you've done, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of that, or rounds if you're supersetting, in the case of arms or chest and back, with that extended rest time, then move on to something else at the end of the workout. You know, do some pause reps, do some fast tempo, do some slow tempo. You know, one day do 10 sets of something, the next day just do 3 sets. You know, do 10 reps, lower rep range, 8 to 10 reps, and the next session do 20 to 25. You got to be willing to experiment. So that's that element of constant progression. So the consistency, doing a back workout in a hotel in Wyoming, the intensity, pushing to the absolute maximum. Even if you've been in a car driving, you're exhausted, you've been on the road, you don't have maximum energy, you're not gonna have an amazing session. You still, whatever you got in that tank, you empty it out. Doesn't always have to be perfect. And then some form of progression, you're willing to continue to experiment and do different things in your workouts. And you're not too closed-minded that, well, this isn't optimal, so I can't do it. In my experience, being obsessed with training for muscle gain, that's what I've seen to produce the most results for me. As a regular freaking dude with a goddamn mullet and a Batman sleeveless t-shirt. You know, nothing crazy, nothing that special, but that's what I think will help you. If nothing else, digest it, think about it, assess for yourself if you think it makes sense, maybe apply it, see what happens. Regardless, be an absolute maniac out there training, blasting the weights, chucking a backpack around, catching a pump. Go make some gains, eh? And if you want to sign up for the ARM program, I think it will help you. I like to make it very clear that there's no magic, one quick fix way to train. It's not going to substitute for hard work, consistency, intensity, and progression, the things I'm talking about. It won't, and you don't necessarily need it. But sometimes it's a bit difficult to determine, what type of variability to have in your training and how to progress your training properly. And over, 15 years of experimenting, I've kind of condensed down the things where I'm like, this is what helped me. And if I was 18 when I first started training, this is what I want to give to myself to be like, all right, here's some like guardrails here, the bumpers when you're bowling, so the ball doesn't go into the gutter. Maybe not the best analogy, but here's a rough guideline of what's going to make your efforts the most efficient in terms of some of the details. So I really truly do believe that it will help you, but I'm not going to sell it to you as some magic thing, which is what most fitness programs are promoted as. It's just a difficult, really hard process to actually gain substantial amounts of muscle. And if you want to have some absolutely massive pipe daddies, then the program that I've put together has helped me to grow my arms significantly from, being just a regular looking dude with 13-inch arms or something like that up to 18.3, 4, something like that. Got some new growth lately. The pipes are absolutely supersizing themselves. Anyways, go make some freaking gains. Let's not ramble on any longer than we have. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you stopping by and, listen to me ramble on about training for muscle gain. So, do yourself a favor, go out there, be consistent, even when other people may not see why you're obsessed with the gym. If you think it's that important to you, that you really love training, you love being in there, and you love the process of pushing yourself to gain more muscle, then don't listen to the haters. Don't get upset if people don't understand, and prioritize consistency to whatever extreme that is needed to execute it. And always give your absolute maximum effort, regardless if you didn't have good sleep, if you've been driving for 10 hours, whatever it is. And then keep an open mind and keep progressing your training, and be willing to put new things in there. If you have obsession fueling your intensity and consistency, a lot of the details aren't really that important. And if you're training suboptimally, it's not really going to matter if you have obsession, because over the long period, the long haul, you're going to get way more growth because you're willing to do whatever it takes. So have a great day. Go make some gains. Our program in the description. Check it out. Thanks for watching. Peace.